Rightio. Rightio, team. We'll get underway.
Al.
Do you want to sit in?
And then Councillor Roy. Fastest mover of any item I've ever seen. It's not going to be here, so things are going to go a bit slow. But I can sit there and choose tomorrow.
Oh.
I thought I heard him talk before.
You're hearing voices,
I did.
councillor.
Randall, can you hear us now?
I can hear you now.
Wonderful, thank you. Randall, through the chair, we've just moved from 9.1 directly into 9.2. So if you're happy, if you could present your report, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll take the report as read. We've got a couple of notes and items we'd like to speak to a little bit further. Just on the catchment liaison chairs AGM meetings, we're all finished those series of meetings. I'd like to thank Ella for the work she did in getting those coordinated this year. And that was a big task. And a real positive for me was hearing the work supervisor and team leaders' efforts being recognised and appreciated by the catchment chairs. They're really strong and trusted relationships, which is a real asset for council. I'm going to introduce or hand over to Jo Patterson. She's the program manager for the Catchment Operations Flood Management Data Program, and she's going to give you an update on where we're at with our work program with that. And hopefully Jo can hear me.
Kia ora, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me as well. I can hear you loud and clear. I'll run through the report in order. So our data and science program has already proven successful with the Metoda bathymetric LiDAR and surveying being used in some analysis for change in aggradation and degradation in parts of the catchment. So further data that we collect will further our understanding, and we'll be in a position to start to look at sediment budgets to inform gravel management going forward. So we have the proposals for the Iriti and the Aparima have just come through. So we're looking at doing the same bathymetric LiDAR in these catchments, but we've been working with LINZ, University of Canterbury, and our STAG members to refine the methodology and the equipment that's used for that. So it's looking pretty promising. It's great to have that technology catch up and be more feasible for us in catchment operations to better understand the change in the riverbed. We're also considering proposals for the other catchments that haven't had this level of detail or data capture yet, like the Wire as well. So working through the report, we have also used the budget on traditional cross-section surveying. We have our own capable drone pilots in our team that have been collecting imagery and data, and also recently purchased some survey equipment so we can survey our own points as we go to collect more information, which has been really useful for the team to use. We've recently received the Iriti River Levels of Service and Options Assessment from Land River Sea. We're just going through finalising feedback on that. So we've looked at the current levels of service or what those stock banks provide, and we're working through what kind of options we can consider going forward for future works. Randall, you may have some more information on this that you'd like to provide, so jump in if you do. So yeah, the report will include 8 potential options for managing water levels upstream and downstream. The model area was quite small because it was a specific assessment that we're doing for the Iriti. So the next stage for the Iriti flood hazard modelling is to broaden that upstream and downstream all the way to the coastline. We'll be looking at banks down as if we didn't have any flood protection, what that would look like, historic events, to validate the model and make sure we understand the accuracy and uncertainty of it. And then we'll look at some breach scenarios and some future options for that lower part of the catchment, so we can start to inform our planning and decision making going forward. The Metoda model, we've received the peer review feedback, the final peer review feedback. The model's being run currently. The report's in final draft, and we've gone through a bit of analysis with Gore District Council and internally at Environment Southland and with STAG members to select some breach locations, and we're running those as well, and they'll be put in that report and deliverable for the Metoda modelling. And then we then we'll be getting through to a level of service understanding and future flood protection planning, informing our planning going forward for that. So moving through, our first team activated again in the April atmospheric river forecast that hit the west coast, but had the potential to come further south. We gained some good lessons. It was great to have the team set up and support EMS and some of our agencies. And the next step for that first team is to work out or finalise the roles and responsibilities and the team structure and how that team interacts with EMS, police, and agencies, and with before an event, during an event, and recovery as well. What we have done is we've started to set up some agreements with consultants so we're prepared for a catastrophic event or a region-wide event where our current staffing level would become overwhelmed. So organisations like Land River Sea and PDP have been approached to look at how could they support us in response, what would their charge rates be, what roles could they fill to support us. So with PDP, they've recently done our dam analysis and our hazard analysis for dam failure. So they're in a good position to support us with the dam infrastructure that we own in Environment Southland at Winton and in and around Invercargill. So that's chipping away nicely. In our dams work program, so is almost finalised. So we've got the work being done by PDP is now being peer reviewed by a recognised engineer. And once that's complete, we'll be able to table that in hopefully the next council meeting to show the outcomes of that assessment, the PIC for each of the dams that we own, and then our work program that we have to adhere to under the new regulations that will come out as well. So there's some time frames that will be done depending on whether our assets are high, medium or low PIC. And Randall, you may want to add some more into that section of the report.
Thanks, Joe. I'll carry on. I'll provide an update on the work program, councillors. We're coming to the end of a very large program of work. The team have done really well and have got through quite a few extra projects here. Again, the aerial spraying program is not yet complete due to the late start and a wet and windy summer limiting operational days. You'll see we've included some images of the new walkway construction behind Stabbycraft and the new security fence that's gone up in agreement with the landowners there, and there's a signed contract for that as well between ourselves and those stakeholders. We've got a wee bit of an update on the Gallagher Road. It's not as positive as some of our other news. We have received the affected party approval forms from iwi, Dock and Fish and Game, but we're still waiting for Lynn, so that project's been delayed. We've received comments from the land pretty frustrated, but it is just the process that we have to go through for that project. Regards to Wallacestown, we made a reasonably good start, but unfortunately we haven't been able to complete that job. We were hoping that some low river flows over summer would allow us to continue, but we think it's going to need alternative options to get those willows removed, regardless of the river flow. So we're going to have to complete that next summer. The Gore stop bank tree removal, tree and stump removal has been completed. There was new machinery included in that as of page 19. Was really impressed with how that job went. There was a bit of uncertainty because there was real risk of damage to the road and the curbing, which have been pretty expensive to repair. As you can see in those photos, that they came out pretty nicely with that machinery, and the guys have done a really good job tidying that up, and it's all grass seeded and well underway. On the climate resilience projects, the construction on Ontario Street's now complete. The photos there, we've got some good grass growth happening there on both sides of the banks, well before before the expected winter. We're underway with the closure reports for Kanoa for that project. Mataura, it's closed, and we're also working on the closure reports there. Wyndham was due to be complete in mid-April, but just the wet weather is holding us off getting a couple of small jobs there to be completed, mainly just the fencing before completion will be issued for that project as well. The Waihopai is likely to be mid-May for practical completion, just due to those same weather delays. So hopefully it gives you a sense that the team's delivered a lot of work this year, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Paul for his support and leadership that's enabled us to deliver a substantial amount of additional work, such as the Mataura True Left and True Right banks, as well as the Gore Stop Bank, and securing funding for the Mataura 2D hydraulic model. So I really appreciate his efforts in getting that done. Welcome any questions.
Thanks for that, Randall and Joe. I think the volume that you're talking about of work being done reflects the importance of how this council sees the work and the catchment going forward. But a question from John and Paul.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, Randall. First one is, I'll just ask them both, and you can on our field trip to Gore, I think some of us in the rural sector noticed some pretty average quality fencing around the stop bank. Just wondering if that's been rectified. And the other one was Wyndham seems to, was it last year this dragged on and now it's dragging on again? Am I right on that? And probably linking to that is there examples that council can look at with regarding what contract and size and scale and how we manage the whole thing for bang for buck? I just keep seeing the gap widening with how we are using contracts in some of the space. And I guess just if that's a true reflection of what I'm saying, or am I not got my head around it?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Through you, Mr. Chair, Ontario Street, I think I've heard the first part of the question. The fencing around there was some remediation works that we required to get the fencing up to our desired standard. Wyndham has dragged on. There's a few reasons why it's dragged on. Wet stored material slowed it down at the start, and we got cut short for the amount of operational days that would have liked to have had to get it completed on time. Ground conditions, and so it's not just the weather; it's the ground condition that we don't want to be making a mess through private property while we're doing these works. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Did you have a third part to that question?
Well, I was just thinking more to the fact we've seen different projects happen this year. Some are getting nailed and done under budget and going really well, and then other ones seem to drag on. And I sometimes see a correlation between the smaller local guy and the bigger group that will tick all the boxes. Mataura is a classic example of a small operator just getting on and getting the job done, and geez, we saved some money. It was awesome. Is there an opportunity to expand some of that, or are we sort of limited within council how we use those small guys?
Through the year, you're right. We've received excellent service both on the Mataura and the Gore projects with the smaller operators. Part of the outcome we wanted from the climate resilient projects was to bring additional contractor capacity into our market, so that if we had larger programs of work, we had the capacity to get them delivered. There's a fine balance between quality and quantity, I think is what you're sort of suggesting. We, through this LTP, as you know, we've proposed additional operational budget, and what we want to is improve the existing market's capacity, so getting them to grow rather than relying on new contractors that take a while to get up to speed.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Paul.
Thank you, Randall. Just a couple of questions around our area. The clearing of overburden on the Upakaroa. The clearing overburden, are they using the overburden for their own purposes afterwards? It seems like and where was the overburden?
through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have to bring the answer back. Sorry, councillor. I'd
And
need
also there was Mayoral work, another 30 grand there of Mayoral work, and the only work I've sort of seen that, well, from the main road has been the bridge work, but what other work have we done on the Mayoral that the contractor's done? It just seems like a good sized invoice there.
So through the chair, we've included 107 hectares of gorse, broom and willow flood fairway work. We've carried out erosion repairs, which included 800 tonnes of rock. And there's quite a bit. I'm not sure if the breakdowns per river, whether it's sort of lumped into that. Or there's also 5,000 cubic metres of overburden and 900 cubic metres of gravel from the Murray Bridge.
So the question is, do they get the benefit of the overburden and the benefit of the gravel?
I'd have to
And
bring
then
that.
charge for work?
I'd have to bring that back to you. Sorry, councillor.
That's just the question. Yeah, you just come back to me privately, Randall. That's fine.
Thank you for that. Morris.
Thank you.
You can-
3 points. On page 12, you've got a map of the gravel areas on the Mataura from basically Kettle Flat down to Riversdale, or just below Riversdale. It's very interesting that the survey shows that the riverbed through this reach is pretty controversial in places, particularly at the Ardlasser Bridge. This reach has, and I'll read it, although everybody can see it, is that over an 11-year period, the mean bed level in this area has been relatively stable with an even mix of aggradation and degradation. In the previous 1-year period, the bed has degraded slightly, although localised areas are grading. Now, we constantly hear from farmers and federated farmers at their annual meeting just recently. The new chairman told a story about how he used to be able to sail his boat underneath the Mossburn Bridge, and now he can hardly walk under it. We constantly hear about gravel building up in rivers, but actually, and I know this occurs in other places as well, this is just not true. Except perhaps in places that probably beside bridges where people drive over and see. So I wonder if there's a, is this information sent to these people? Do they understand what is really going on in our riverbeds as regard to gravel?
So through your chair, I think it's important to also look at that channel incisation. So I mean that is a direct result of gravel islands. It's probably forcing the river to move down because it hasn't got the space within that channel to move across. So it sort of can have the same effect in terms of creating exposing larger areas of gravel, which looks like a gravel buildup. But then, of course, the risk is that those gravel islands then get quite heavily vegetated and then become permanent in nature, which causes even more damage to the surrounding area. There's a lot to go through and analyse. Just the size of the catchment. It's we've got a bit of a snapshot here in the report, but we actually have to fully analyse it and show how well the gravel has been transported through the system. And I think we've done quite a lot of work on this, and I think we've all acknowledged, including the likes of the Aparima and already, this isn't unique, that the gravel's not being efficiently transported through the system by the rivers at the moment, and partially due to lack of floods, probably in the that 20-year period.
Okay. One other, Mr. Chairman, sorry, on page 18, 2 points here. Under the annual vegetation control program, with the new rating proposal, where we are not having these rating districts, but we are having one overall management area, does it mean that the current places that are not in a catchment district, will work be able to occur on those places and be subsidised or paid for by the council that haven't been able to be done in the past. Is that be possible?
So through the chair, so the LIN's contribution is probably targeted for the sections of the rivers that they previously kept under control. So we've got a bit of a collaborative effort with them. So those areas that have traditionally been done with that funding would probably continue to be that way. But as we sort of develop the gravel management strategy and the floodplain management work, we would want to be targeting other areas, not just the current traditional ones.
Yeah. And that'll be possible under the new rating scheme. Okay, thanks. And last question, Mr. Chairman, relates to the report on the Branksome River Crossing Trial. I was at the Winton meeting where the person from Royal Transport showed some pictures of this and what they'd done and everything. And I did ask a question. I wasn't a very satisfactory answer, but I think that this report needs to be peer reviewed. From what I could see from it, it looked like it was pretty average monitoring program. It seems to me that it's unlikely that the rules in the water plan attaining to water quality and the degradation that can occur when you drive a heavy vehicle across a river, seems to me unlikely that that's going to be able to be complied with. So I would hope that if they apply for a resource consent, I suppose they'll have to do that. Then it'll be important to ensure that the science behind their work is properly peer reviewed to make sure that what they have done is a true reflection of the real situation, especially in relation to our water plan. So that's not really a question, but it's a comment. So thank you.
I'm sure that would be tested through the application, would it not? You would think. That's very good. So, Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm not sure I'm going to ask my question because I can't find a way to ask it without it sounding far worse than I had intended it to be. But I would like, so I'll come back to you on that one. But I would like to say that I hope that the people who continually ask me what Environment Southland does have a look at this report, because it's a very good example of many of the things, whether you agree with them or not is irrelevant actually, but it's about what we are actually doing. So I hope that, you know, some of my fellow constituents and those from outside of my region, my area, have a look at this and see just what the breadth of some of the work, and this is only one part of it, that we do. So that would be my comment. Thanks, Chair.
It would be a good media release.
Absolutely. And when you remember how to frame that question.
Yeah, I might have to ask it offline. It's not inflammatory.
Different same area Morris is discussing, but I was wondering what I was going to put a question, and I understand there's no more sort of gravel, it's just where it sits and things like that. Randall, but can we actually start to see how much volume of gravel is in the river? And I mean, I'm not saying we're going to clean gravel out, but just getting a balance of some of these areas where, you know, probably where I'm heading here, that actually extraction, just what the annual sort of extraction over a period, and actually the use needs for our gravel roads and things like that, the community needs for gravel. And just, you know, I'd love to know what the effect of a managed gravel extraction, if we need to move some of the stuff, if it's a problem, how much do you actually need, the community need during the year? And it goes against maybe what Morris is sort of indicating, but it's knowledge of saying when we get these surveys and that, you must know sort of depth of gravels and things and calculating volumes and just how much would that actually interfere with rivers. I don't know if that can be done, Randall. It should be able to.
Yeah, it's certainly the next step in terms of how we transform the data or the science for operationalising it. We have to establish gravel budgets per catchment. I don't know if Joe's got an opinion, but I think we're probably close to having what we need for the Mataura and Wakaia to get that underway. Obviously, very early days still for Ariti and Naparima, but part of part of the gravel budget. It's not only what's entering the system and exiting the system, but what's needed to be allocated out to the stakeholders and the communities and roading contract. So that's all part of it, and it's a very important part.
Thanks for that, Randall. A question from Al.
Just a comment to you, Morris, that Idlissa Bridge was probably a wrong example to take, because there's been our river scheme, Rivermen, working there with the farmer, and they have been removing gravel. So yeah, they have been managing that bridge and underneath there. So yeah, there's plenty of areas where there is gravel build up, definitely.
Okay, that's
In the
very good.
interest of channeling Councillor Roy, I'm happy to move that recommendation if you'd like.
I just want to ask one little question myself, if I could. Randall, in regards to the Gallagher Road and Linds, is their processes just take a bit longer, or is there something that's genuinely holding that up?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we believe it's because of a restructure. So they did have that kind of work that would have been consulted or provided by a consultant, but they've taken the work back in house. So they might be struggling to resource the workload, and it's probably a relatively very small affected party approval compared to some of what they might have on the table.
Okay.
We've written to them and said it's urgent, and I've asked them to prioritise it for us.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you very much, Joe and Randall, for that. We have Lyndall's already moved that, so we need a seconder. Paul, thank you. Any further discussion on that item? Okay, all vote in favour.
Aye. Thank you, Randall.
That's carried. Right, we're going to go back. I think Rebecca's here waiting for us, so we're going to go back to the item 9.1. So we've also got another report to come in at 3 o'clock. So that's all right. Oh, there you go, Rebecca. Hello. Look, the floor is yours. You want to give us a report on the Fiordland Marine Guardians. So just take it away, and I'm sure there'll be some questions emanating out of the report. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to join you today. The Guardians meet quarterly, and we just thought it might be useful for us to check in with you every second meeting of yours or so, just to give you an update of matters that we're dealing with in the Fiordland Marine area that you might be interested in. I thought that today, unless there are specific items that you'd like me to address, that I'd focus on compliance done by the council in the Fiordland Marine area, and also touch a bit on the proposed Bluff vessel haul-out facility.
Great.
Excellent. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm talking about things that are relevant to this committee in particular, because I appreciate there's a number of different committees that our work crosses. So in terms of compliance, we'd just like to acknowledge the recent efforts that Environment Southland has put into compliance efforts in the Fiordland Marine area, and particularly with regards to compliance on resource consents. I think that's an area that's probably been a bit sort of once over lightly for the last few years, and so it's nice to see some focus being put in that area in Fiordland. Officials from council recently have participated in several joint agency compliance patrols in the Fiordland Marine area. And these are typically done on board the dock vessel, the Southern Winds, and they're a really cost-effective way to go about performing compliance functions and monitoring in such a vast and remote area. So multiple agencies contribute to funding those trips and then putting people on board the boat. And they typically go into Fiordland for a week or more, and cover a range of different compliance matters across the agencies, from things like fisheries compliance, marine protected areas, behaviour around marine mammals, and for the council, looking in particular at compliance with the conditions of the various consents that are held by people in the area. So as I mentioned, it seems like there's a bit of catch-up work to do in terms of resource consent compliance for the council in Fiordland, and it sounds like there have been several instances of non-compliance detected in those last couple of trips, particularly around assets like moorings, for example. So there's probably a bit of a backlog there, which is due to there being that period of time where that work hasn't been done. But we really do think that it's an important presence for the council to be showing up and looking into those consents and calling people out when they are non-compliant. As you'll know, there's a lot of squeeze on resource in there at the moment, given that it's a confined space and that there's only so much area that moorings can go into, for example. And you'll also obviously be aware of the changes to the coastal plan in terms of surface water consent management and allocation. So I guess the environment is there and ripe for people to be not conforming or complying with their consent conditions, or in fact operating without consents. So really important for the council to be there. And I also think it's really informative for the planning team in council as the coastal plan goes about getting reviewed, just to get a better understanding of some of the issues that there are for things like installation of moorings and squeezes on the amount of available space, for example. It sounds like there's some good conversations going on between the consents and compliance and the planning team as well. I've talked about moorings a little bit, but I don't know if it would be of interest for this committee to understand a bit better some of the problems that we have with moorings in Fiordland Marine Area at the moment. I'll only go into that if I get some thumbs up. I could talk all day about Fiordland, so I don't want to be boring anybody. Okay, so had a few thumbs up there, righto. So with Fiordland, even though it seems like a very vast place with lots of little nooks and crannies, there's actually really limited spaces for all weather conditions. So for vessels to be able to seek safe haven in an enormous storm, for example. And it is the responsibility of the council to ensure that all vessels that are in there can actually seek that safe haven in adverse weather situation. So currently there are moorings sort of dotted all around Fiordland, and there are generally, in navigational sort of management terms, you wouldn't want to mix moorings with anchoring areas. So for visiting vessels that don't have their own moorings in there, they tend to be prepared to drop anchor, but you want to make sure that there's enough space in those sheltered bays and all weather anchoring to be able to do so safely without getting snagged up in people's mooring gear. And that's something that we think needs to have a really careful look at from a sort of holistic perspective. Fiordland is, are we providing enough space in there for people that's sort of dedicated to anchoring, and particularly as vessels are getting larger and more vessels are coming into Fiordland, are we planning there for the future with that? We're hoping that as the coastal plan review proceeds, that the rules around moorings themselves will be looked at as well. So in the current coastal plan, I might not have this completely correct, but I understand that you only need to apply for a resource consent to put a mooring into the main harbours, which are in Deep Cove and Doubtful Sound, Patea, and in Puapiatahi, Milford Sound. But our activity throughout Fiordland has really expanded beyond those main ports. And so when people want to put in a mooring, they can do so, and then they just need to inform the council where that mooring has been placed and the coordinates of that mooring. So we think that it probably makes better sort of strategic management at a field-wide level going into the future. There's also different rules around occupation of moorings, so whether people have exclusive rights to that mooring or whether they are, you know, just on a first come first serve sort of a basis. So there's varying sort of occupation rights. And at the moment, there's no way for a visiting vessel that happens upon a mooring to know whether the owner of that mooring has exclusive rights to occupy it or not. And so you can imagine a situation where a visiting vessel ties off to a mooring, and then quite late at night, the owner of that mooring comes along and kicks them off the mooring, and then they're left sort of scrambling around in the dark, trying to find somewhere safe to anchor. Not an ideal scenario. And also potentially leads to quite a bit of conflict on the water in there as well. So it's something that we'd like to have clearer rules around, and a clearer way of people that are visiting the area understanding what the deal is with any mooring that they come across. And then just lastly, with regards to moorings, you'll be aware of the recent hoo-ha around the mooring structures that were put in with the multi-arm underwater structure. So they have a surface buoy on the top and then multiple anchors that come down kind of like a spider web on the seafloor. The company that's been installing those moorings, we've been in close contact with them, and they've now come up with an alternative design which seems to tick all of our boxes in terms of not taking up valuable seafloor space and creating unseen navigational hazards for people that are trying to anchor. So we're now working to encourage them to replace those moorings throughout Fiordland with their new design. And we hope that in the future, the coastal plan will have some guidance or rules in there around what sorts of mooring structures are suitable for the confines of places like Fiordland, to avoid all of that going on. And so that's about all I had on moorings and compliance. Maybe I'll just pause there in case there are any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca, for that. Yeah, any questions? I've got one. I think Gail, you was showing a hand up earlier on. Was that correct?
Yep, no, it was. I was actually giving the thumbs up, but I do have a question in terms of fast track and the possibility of open ocean marine farming and such like within the Fiordland marine area. What would that look like for the Guardians, or not look like?
That would be highly concerning, Gail. When the national government were last in, there was a series of investigations into publishing salmon farming in some of the southern fjords, particularly chalky salmon, dusky tamatea. So we vigorously opposed that at the time. But we did, because we just don't think that that's environmentally suitable for the confines of Fiordland. However, we made a submission to the coastal plan when the chapters of the coastal plan were initially getting looked at. There was a section on marine farming that we put a submission in on, and it was a few years ago, so I'm just trying to remember. But we did acknowledge that not all sorts of marine farms are created equal in terms of their environmental impacts and also potential suitability for Fiordland. So it may be that in the future there are some sort of high value, low impact farming, for example, like pharmaceuticals or like biomedical species like sponges, for example. I don't know if some new miracle species comes along that's native to Fiordland. Maybe there could be an argument or a case made for farming in that regard, but definitely not fishery, finfish aquaculture.
Well, probably my comment is keep up the good work, because you have been around a long time now and you've been doing a great job and keeping the community informed and taken them on the journey with you. And we could probably learn a lesson around how to work with our communities using the Guardians as an example. Kia ora.
Thanks, Gail. I appreciate that.
Thanks for your question, Gail. So we've got a question for you, Paul.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. That was great. With regards to moorings, these spider moorings that have been put in, these ones that have got and no doubt they do a bit more damage on the sea floor than just your normal old standard mooring. How many of those do you think have been put in? And is it going to be a voluntary thing that company comes along and replaces them?
So just clarifying in terms of the benthic impact of those moorings, that was actually the initial rationale for putting them in the first place, was that instead of like a traditional mooring, which has like a big concrete block and then the chain swinging around that scours the seafloor, these systems use big screws that go into the seafloor, and then the chains come up from them. So it avoids that constant sort of dragging over the seafloor. So aside from the installation of the things, which requires some divers to get down and drill them into the seafloor, yeah, but arguably the benthic impact is better than a traditional mooring. So this new design that they've come up with is based on the same idea of a screw and a chain coming off, but just a single screw. So you don't get that spider web effect that I was talking about and taking up of valuable real estate. You'll have it on record where some of the history of these moorings. There has been a court case involving the owner of the moorings in Harrison Cove and Piopiotahi, Milford Sound, with the council. So in Milford Sound, Piopiotahi, there are currently 2 of these moorings in place in Harrison Cove, and there was an application for another one to go into Deepwater Basin in Piopiotahi as well. The applicant has now has got a sign off on the consent to replace the 2 in Harrison Cove with the new design, and also install the one in Deepwater Basin with the new design. So those 3 will be taken care of. There's another one in First Arm in Doubtful Sound, Patea, and that one is for want of a better word, a spider web mooring, and that one was unfortunately, due to a bit of a miscommunication between the council and the owner, it was installed in the wrong place, and so unfortunately now that mooring there takes up, basically it removes all of the anchoring space from that really important anchorage, and that's causing a lot of disgruntlement for operators in Patea Doubtful Sound at the moment. So we're hoping that they will voluntarily remove that one in time. And then the last one is in the Fiordland Marine area, is in Cascade Cove, which is in Dusky Sound, Tamatea. That one's not such a problem because it's in a reasonably large bay, so it's not really displacing anyone at the moment. But it is quite ugly. You can see it in shallow water, this kind of mess of wires and anchors across the seafloor.
So with Cascade Cove, is that where the Camelot River comes out?
No. No, it's there's also in Cascade Cove, so that's right down in Dusky Sound, Tamatea, and there's a big barge in that bay that you may be aware of, that's owned by the Wallace.
I've got it now.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for that, Paul. Rebecca, you want to continue on your presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So this is the final point I wanted to raise was this proposed vessel haul out facility in Bluff, and I'm assuming that you're all aware of ongoing work with multiple councils to try and get that one across the line. The Guardians, we originally raised this idea way back quite some years ago now. We brought together a lot of different stakeholders and users that were having problems with the synchro lift in Bluff at the time, in terms of being able to access that facility and get their vessels clean. At the time, we just brought in the Fiordland Regional pathway management plan, and one of the requirements of that plan is that vessels have to have a clean hull before they go into Fiordland. And it was a very sort of stringent requirement, but we were concerned that there were not the facilities available for operators to meet that requirement before they went into Fiordland. So we weren't setting them up with what they needed to be able to meet the obligations of that new plan. The situation's changed slightly, and it seems that the management of the synchro lift has improved, and people are finding it easier to access that facility. However, it's still under really high demand, and it is still non-compliant in terms of waste that is washed from the bottoms of the boats just ends up back in Bluff Harbour again, which isn't an ideal situation. So the Guardians are aware that ES and the Southland District Council and the Invercargill City Council and others have been working together to try and progress this plan, and that a business case is being developed. One of the questions we were asked at our last meeting was whether how we could go about trying to demonstrate that there was a need for this facility. And to that, we just want to say that the need hasn't gone away. If anything, it's even more urgent. We're looking, obviously you've seen what's been happening with the Kalupa incursion up north. There are an increasing number of marine pests in New Zealand waters, and Southland's kind of got away with it for now because we're sort of down at the bottom of the country and don't get as much vessel traffic. But these species are all headed our way, and Bluff is the last sort of line of defence before we get into Fiordland. So we'd just like to emphasise our desire for that facility to get cranking along. The sooner the better. And there's heaps of other examples all around the country that could be drawn upon in order to design a really functional facility that meets its biosecurity requirements.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Any questions? Al, you must have a question on the haul-out facility, surely.
I just pointed to poor Paul there, and before he goes in August, he's going to get it completed for us. I'll work with you.
That's a challenge. Lyndall.
No, I'll just say here to Rebecca's comments.
Yeah.
We're on the same page, Rebecca.
Any further comments or questions? Hey, oh, okay, Gail, you've got your hand up. Sorry, I didn't see the yellow hand there. Fire ahead, please.
No, it was actually a clapping hand. No, I support the haul out facility. Living in Bluff, listening to our fishermen and everyone else, it's a must do rather than it being optional. And you as a shareholder should be supporting that. Kia ora.
Thanks, Gail. Hey, thank you very much, Rebecca. Look, I think it's really good. You mentioned at the start about coming and talking to us more regularly. We would certainly appreciate that, on saying that on behalf of the committee. But yeah, keep checking in with us, and if you've got something important to say, give us a call, please.
Will do. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much for that. So look, we're moving that report, are we? Yes.
I'll move it, Councillor.
Thank you, Lyndall, and Paul will second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Right, so we're skipping all over the place here. We're actually going down to 9.5. We're not following the script today. So we've got the Puka Rekia Trust report to do. We've got a few visitors up the back if you'd like to step up to the front. Thanks. And this is through Rally here. So welcome very much. Welcome, Rob. You know your way around the building pretty good. I know that. But could you give us an introduction?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair and councillors. Can I introduce our new general manager to the trust? This is Darius Fagan. He joined us Monday, first day, and he took over from Campbell Leakey, who left us early in January. So we're pretty fortunate to have Darius on board, significant background, and brings some great leadership skills, I think, to the trust and to Southland, which is going to really help. So Darius, our councillors who are a key partner in
So,
introduce Darius.
thank you very much. Welcome, Darius. So do you have something to share with us, like
Yes,
a
I've got a
report?
PowerPoint.
Yes.
You would have read my report, and I'm sure you've read it backwards and you'll know it. So I won't go over that.
Struggle going forward.
I just want to sort of take you through some key points. So, but it's also great to be here, and this is part of my regular checking in. I'm your representative on the trust, so it's always good to come back and share what we've been up to with you. So this is a bit of a PowerPoint to take you through things. You can see it's as a lot of you will be really familiar with Rakura. It's one of our little Southland treasures. But actually, a lot of New Zealanders are now sort of now discovering this place, and it's chock-a-block most of the year. You'll have to work the slide out himself. Jeez, come on, you should know that like my IT skills. You're not the boss.
Not just the.
Apologies, people.
So look, this is a nationally significant project. We've got 180,000 hectares down there. We've got quite a significant population of about 400 odd people there. It's mainly national park. I think it's about 80% national park from memory, and there's some small areas of leasehold and some freehold there as well. But look, it is a significant project. It is going to need a whole lot of partners to take this forward, and we're taking very much a collaborative effort to take it forward with this stage. Next slide, please. Yeah, sort of touches on it there. We've done a fair bit of work that's already underway, and it gives you a bit of a sense of the island and how it sits in the place. You will be pretty familiar with that. We've got Over Island there, which is already predator-free, and some of those offshore islands as well. There's ongoing issues with Over because it keeps on getting reinfested with rats from the island itself. So once we've done the job, it's going to be helpful for these existing predator-free places. Next slide. So our goal is to eradicate 6 species. There's 3 species of rats, feral cats, hedgehogs, and possums. And the reason we're doing it is, look, we've got some pretty special species down there. We just need to protect them. The southern dodgewell, as you know, is in trouble at the moment, and so we just need to get this job done and to enable these species to thrive, and also to be a place where we can reintroduce species as well. Next slide. So we talked about it's 180,000 hectares, mainly national park. It is the largest eradication, I think, in certainly in New Zealand history, and one of the biggest in the world. And there's going to be lots of opportunities as we take this project through. Next slide, please. So here's a bit of a sense of how do we compare with the rest of other projects around the world. South Georgia is bigger, but not many people there. Sub-Antarctic's a smaller area. In the Campbell Islands, a smaller again, Lord Howe Island, much smaller, but quite a significant population there as well. So we're up there. It is significant. So look, this project goes back for quite a long way. And certainly when I was working for Environment Southland, it was sort of part of our conversation as well. We had a number of scoping reports. We've had a number of false starts along the way. We've had a lot of discussion on cats early on that didn't go so well. We had a stakeholder alliance, which was a significant first step in 2019. The trust was formed in 2021. We had a DOC funding, so DOC fund the trust. We've signed a partnership with Manaaki Whenua, a research partnership, and we've recruited a project team, and it's just been refreshed with Darius on board. And so next slide. Yes, so you can see, we can skip over this. Yeah, we've done some, we've built the team, we've done some research, we've got the research partnership established, we've done a hedgehog survey. So hedgehogs are one of the species down there. We're just looking at how widespread they are. Are they an issue? We've also had the mouse investigation, which is ongoing. And thanks to these sort of works that's going on down there. And we've also done a lot of work exploring partnerships around how we're going to fund this. This is a significant project. We thought initially it was about 80 million. We think it's more than that now. So we're looking at how do we fund that. And we've had a lot of conversations along the way with partnering with others on that, and that's ongoing. Yes, some of the detail we've been doing on this work is just looking at infrastructure. You know, what infrastructure have we got down there to do the job? What else are we going to need? What does the geography look like? And what does it mean for the operation? It's a pretty unique place. You've got big areas of wetlands. You've got some big sand dune complexes. You've got some forests. You've got some sub-alpine areas. So what does that mean for the? And also, obviously, very isolated. So what impacts that going to have? Next slide. So we've also we've had a lot of conversations along the way. We've had quite a engagement with communities and a lot of discussions going on. And so we've lots of questions about things like I'm not sure about the fence. I'm concerned about the methods. What will this mean for our cats in Oban? What's it going to mean for our lifestyle? We won't mention deer too much here, but that's certainly one of the issues that comes up in the questions. So this isn't just about it. This is not just a technical issue. This is the people challenge as well, and it's going to be critical to keep the people on board with as we proceed with through this. Absolutely critical. So going forward, so that's where we've come from. So what have we done since? We've had a lot of focus the last 3 or 4 months on preparing an implementation plan, and it's shaping up. And I have to say, I really appreciate Royal South and making Ellie available to help us with that. Well, she's done a great job anyway in her spare time. Ellie's helped us shape up an implementation plan, which actually, what does it look like? How we're going to do this job? So it's an integrated plan. What does the operation look like, which is the obvious piece, but also what sort of biosecurity system are we going to need to support the project once it has been delivered? What's the research plan? And what does that look like for this work? Also, what's the communication engagement program look like as we shape it up? Done a whole lot of work around tahu aspirations. What are they? What's their aspirations for Rakiura? And how do we integrate that in with the plan? It's been a key bit of work. What have I forgotten? But that's been a key. We've also also firming up on what does that sustained funding look like going forward? How much is it going to cost? And again, not just a technical issue, but a social challenge as well. And also building the relationships to make this thing go. So just we've also got to make sure that the governance arrangements for taking this project forward are secure in place. So, how are we going to manage this 80 million plus operation going forward? We're looking at this being achieved over 5 or 6 years. Next 5 or 6 years, so it's going to be a significant project for South. So keep in touch. Yeah, absolutely. The thing we stress, it's community led. No one group or person is responsible or is going to make this succeed. It's going to be a whole lot. So only if we can do this together, it's going to work. And Environment Southland is a key part of that group. Of making it work going forward. So happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Rob and Darius, for coming in. Surely we've got a few questions. If not, I'll start things off. John and Paul.
Hi. Thank you. Very impressive. And a heck of a challenge. And it does make you think with the connection between the mainland, what are the big disruptors that have to happen? What does it mean for the general public of South and getting used to the connection to the island?
Yes, so look, I think it's going to be plus. It's going to enhance that experience. The techniques are pretty well tried elsewhere at the moment. So in South Western, They've been working there on eradicating rats and critters from an area of 80,000 hectares around France. So using cameras and intensive toxins, they've really done the job over about 3 year period, operational period. So operationally, it's doable.
Yeah, probably the connection between the land. And there's a lot of private users who have houses over there, they transport themselves. What does this mean?
So a key part of the implementation is the biosecurity. What is it? So how do we, so part of it's going to be, we think, and we're, Environment South and the trusts have got employed someone half-time each at the moment. So that's for next year. And part of their work is shaping up what does a biosecurity border look like? What measures do we need to put in place? There's a pathway plan. It looks to me as though it's going to be needed. So, how do you manage that pathway between the islands? So that boats, those things are some sort of, I would call it a border in the broader sense. How do you ensure that rats and mice don't get on board? And there's already a border operating when the mutton birders are so head away down to those islands. There's already those boats are checked. I think there's a dock have a dog there that does some of that work. So these are things we're going to have to shape up. We recognise that border post the work's done is going to be absolutely crucial. Look, the big advantage is we've got a reasonably tough bit of water between us and Rekiarup, between the mainland and Rekiarup. But hey, it's not going to be straightforward. So we've got an aircraft, we've got boats, we've got tourists, we've got all of those things. So it's something that's been well and truly identified, and we'll certainly need to give that some attention. And we'll be working with Environment South and looking at what does it look like and what does it mean, and how might we pay for it. But actually, unless we've got a good secure border, then that investment's going to be at risk, and we don't want to have that 80 million plus. So I'm not quite answering your questions. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But hey, it's been recognised, and some pathway plans going to be a key part of it.
Thanks, John, for your question. Paul?
Just a naive question. Pigs, are there pigs on Stewart Island? No, so just like mice, let's hope.
Yeah.
No pigs.
No pigs.
So there's
no mustelids. That's the other thing.
So you've got a really big project ahead of you, and we all have, I suppose. And the community being on board would be a large thing as well. I see from some of the questions with regards to the own cats and fencing and all that sort of stuff. It's only minor, the issues, but I'm sure the whole community's on board. And it would be good to get the rest of Southland on board with the likes of what John's saying. We're the gateway.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Part of the promoting predator-free.
And I guess good to raise, we've got an external advisory group that's been in place since 2019, 2018, or even before that.
Yeah, probably
10 years. So these are to represent the key stakeholders. There's a fisherman, there's locals, there's Ngātahu, there's the Environment Southlands on there, and they've been a key voice for us, and they've provided advice, and they've actually been the ones who actually appointed the trust in the legal sense. So they're a key part of actually ensuring that those connections are strong. But you did right, there's work to do on the mainland. We've got to have support, so this needs to be
really good job.
Thanks, Paul. It's actually quite a good question. The hardest species may be
people. Yes.
It's all about people.
Well, it could be. Just on that, before we go to Morris for a question, has that external group over that period of time since 2019 changed their views, or have you seen a different community view come up since that time? Has it remained reasonably consistent with that advisory group?
I think there has been a consistent view. Ellie might want to comment on this because she's been part of it for longer than I have, actually. But it has been pretty consistent, and I guess there's a level of, I'm not sure it's about impatience, but the need for urgency, I think is what I'd say. I'm hearing that's getting louder and louder, but Ellie, you might want to.
Yeah, so through you, Chair. There has been a change, particularly the last few years. So I think we've very clearly heard the message that people want to see Rakiura predator free. There's lots of questions around the methodology, and that's a constant thing in the community on what's the method, how are you going to do it, and what does that mean for us? Questions around biosecurity. I think the big change over the last few years is COVID and how that's affected the island. There's been an increase in visitor numbers down on Rakiura. So there's concern actually if we make it predator free, is that going to increase numbers? Is it going to make it harder for us to live there? Where are people going to stay? So there has been a slight change in the way people are talking about it. I think there's still very much that support for it happening, but very much the how and the reality of where the contract is going to live. What does that mean if we have more tourists to the island? Where are they going to stay? Is that a good thing, or is it going to push us out? So there are some complicated things to be working through, but as a whole, I think people are still reasonably.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's all right to be a bit pessimistic about this, but really, you know, unless you use mass amount of 1080, unless you introduce a sterile rat or something like that, all you're really going to be able to achieve is to suppress the numbers to a lowish level so that the wildlife can thrive to a certain extent. Isn't that the reality of it?
No. It'd be good to, maybe we should think about this, Ellie, is maybe there's we're looking to take a number of people up to South Westland to look at what they've done there, in challenging situations, what they've achieved. And I think to take, some key people up, including people from Ryman South might be quite good. And, I was going to use the word doubters, council, but that's a bit harsh. But seriously, I think I think a number of us have been up there and have been pretty staggered with what's been achieved. Including, I wasn't a doubter, but I was a wee bit sceptical about what could be achieved with what, and I was impressed. And everyone who's been doing it. So I'm really confident around this can be achieved, and that's not to say it's not going to be easy, but I'm really confident, and I think Ellie would be as well. Yes.
Yes.
I think South Westland's a good example, but South Westland's a good example, but there's a body of knowledge around the country that's growing from other predator-free initiatives. Miramar is a good example of how it's done in a populated area, and that knowledge is growing all the time. Difficult, yes. Impossible, don't think so. Worth trying, definitely.
And certainly Miramar is more challenging in an urban environment than Rakiura. And it's been massive for us. It's a first-hand experience.
Well, good luck.
You'll be a supporter next time I come.
But it's important to have critical friends, right?
Yeah, no, that's actually quite a good question. But no, that must just be just making it so much better. So we've got Gail with a question, then we'll go to Lyndall. Gail, please.
Kia ora. I've got a conflict of interest. I've been on that original group for the last 10, 12 years. But part of our responsibility as a group is to report back to our constituents. And lucky for myself and Stuart and Tanya, our Titi community have seen firsthand what it's like to have rats, to live with them and for them to be eradicated. So our Titi community is saying, we're sick of hearing about it, when are you going to do it? We also have the Deer Stalkers Association, and their representative reports back all the time. He explains everything, and he brings back the positive and the negative. So us as members are fully informed and know what's happening within that community. That doesn't mean when we go over there to have community member meetings with the community, they don't hammer us again, but we love them and they love us. So, kia ora.
Thanks, Gail. Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. Just conscious of the fact that we are putting together at some point soon our new coastal plan. So what would be top priorities for us to bear in mind when we're doing that for this?
I'm sure there's some aspects of the coastal plan that are going to be critical. I think it's also in pest management plan and the pathway plan under the Biosecurity Act is probably going to be as important, maybe more important. That's been my focus is where the legislative tool is going to be. But we need to get some thought to the coastal plan as well. That's a good point.
Okay.
Look forward to hearing from you.
That's very good. Thanks very much for that. I've just got one question myself in regards to funding. It's a big pot of money that's needed, isn't it? Are you looking at any type of corporate sponsorship? Because I can imagine there could be some big opportunities of seeing revegetation at scale and what that would mean for that could be quite an attractive proposition for growing vegetation in terms of, you know, leveraging off that for credits, biodiversity credits, whatever that might be. I shouldn't be asking questions like that.
Councillor Rodway's going to bake some cakes.
That's good.
Fundraiser.
So one of our conversations at the moment with the philanthropics, so they're going to be a significant funder. You know, this is not going to be all government money. This is going to be over half from the philanthropics, both here in New Zealand and internationally. There's also some work underway looking at carbon sequestration around on the island. So, you know, that may be a future. That's not going to be probably a source of funding initially, but it may be a source of funding to help with maintenance control that's needed. That work's underway, and they'll shape up the detail. Is there a case for saying there is additional sequestration from this work? So
That's very good.
Can I just say also that we'll be coming back to talk to you next couple of months because things are moving reasonably quickly, and so we want to update you on where things have got to.
Oh, that'll be fantastic. And as the project commences and gets underway, it'd be quite good to have some sort of semi-regular updates too. Yeah. That would be well appreciated. Hey, look, we'll let you guys carry on. Really appreciate you coming in. It's a pretty exciting project, really, when you look at the scale of it and the international interest in what we're trying to achieve. So,
thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor.
No worries. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
So we move there.
Jared's just suggested that we switch the order so I stay sitting here, but that's up to you, Chair.
What's that? Sorry.
In terms of items,
Yes.
suggestion that as I'm
We're all
sitting here,
over
we
the place
keep
today.
going, but.
Yeah, we'll just pass that one off.
Yeah,
Do you move that, thanks?
Receive that report.
John, second. All those in favour? Thank you very much. So what's the suggestion again that we?
Maybe move bio up.
Let's do that. 9.4, biosecurity and biodiversity operational report. So,
Good. Thanks, everyone. So I'll take the main report as read, but I do have a few slides and pictures for you that I'll just go through quickly because it's been quite a long day. So this isn't included in the report because it's updates additional to the last quarter, but I thought you'd be really interested in them. So the first one, as you are aware, we've been looking for mice out on Rakiura. And we've got some really good pictures in. So the team have been out, the staff went out in the pouring down rain. So big thanks to them to get a whole heap of traps out, rat traps, mouse traps, lures, and really good quality cameras out at the 8 sites where we thought there might have been mice detected. we've set them up in such a way that we can actually tell the size of the rodent that's coming in. So as you'll be able to see from that picture, that is definitely a nice big fat rat. It is not a mouse. A mouse would have to be able to fit into those little holes in the traps. So we are collecting images every day. We've got the contractor going out every day now, checking all the camera footage, checking multiple traps at the multiple sites. And I don't want to jinx us, but so far we have rats and possums and cats. We have not got mice. So we've got a couple more days to do, and we'll keep checking. And if there is anything suspicious that we're not quite sure of, and we're actually trapping them as well, so we can send them off to a lab and get them checked. But so far, it's looking really positive. The other thing very quickly I wanted to talk about is golden clams, which are obviously an MPI response up in the Waikato. But we have got some clams in a piece of a block here that I'm going to pass around to show you. So this is what our golden clams look like. Not our golden clams, the golden clams we're worried about. This is what they look like. So I thought it would be a good chance for you guys to see them. The national response has now identified a second site of clams, which have turned out to be a different invasive species again. So not golden clams, but also on the North Island. And one of the big things that we're doing to prevent the spread is the Check Clean Dry program. Scientific advice is that the Check Clean Dry program would need to be updated to kill these species. Our current program doesn't work. We need to put bleach or potentially other things in top of the Check Clean Dry. So we are working with MPI on what those changes could look like for the South Island, where the clams aren't currently found, but just making sure that our programs are effective to prevent them from coming here.
Freshwater.
Freshwater, they're freshwater clams, currently in the Waikato River, and then with that secondary new type of clam not in Lake Taupo, but in a pond next to Taupo.
I'm not getting this into enough, do they?
I've seen mussels in the river. Wow.
There are native freshwater mussels as well. They are quite different and distinct, so don't panic just because you see a mussel in the water. The other thing as we're doing show and tell that I was going to share with you is that we're obviously really concerned about wallabies entering the region. So the team have been doing a whole heap of training, and they went up to Canterbury to find some wallabies to see what they look like and to see what everything looks like. So we've got some wallaby poo. So if you guys see this wallaby poo that looks like this when you're out and about and around your farm, so please tell us, because this is wallaby poo. I would need Dave to explain the difference between wallaby poo and other types of poo, but we'll pass it on to him anyway.
Oh, good on you.
For the golf course.
Why would I not have a picture of wallaby poo in my?
Also, hair poo, deer poo, it can look quite similar, but the specific is not poo. But so that's wallaby poo. So that's what my team has been doing. We've been looking at different poo, and we've also been doing a bit of pest plant identification of species we don't have in the region as well, so that we can. So that's the fun stuff we've been working on. One of the other things we wanted to give you an update on is that we've signed up to a program called Strategic Grants, which offers as a GEM local program, and by us signing up, it allows all of our community groups, or 50 community groups, to also have access onto a grants portal. One of the reasons we've done it is we're really conscious that our Jobs for Nature funding is coming to the end, so we're not going to be able to keep funding as many community groups at the same level. So we've signed up to this portal, and we're about to give a whole heap of training to the groups on how they can get on and how they can start planning grants. And there's sort of 300, 400+ grants that might be available to them, so we're trying to support them that way. Couple of other updates. The marine program throughout Q3 was particularly busy. Midsummer, it's our busy season. We've done a couple of compliance trips and a lot of control and surveillance trips. The diagram shows the timeline of Undaria and Fiordland back from 2005, when we didn't have any, to the first detection in 2010. And the star at the top is our really exciting 5 years free of Undaria down at Chalky Inlet. So that's a really big milestone, I know. But we haven't found mature Undaria there since April whatever, 5 years ago, it was 2019. So that's a major win, and it does show that when we find things quickly and we respond to them straight away, we can deal with it. Unfortunately, we do still have that major incursion in Breaksea Dusky, but it's worked in Chalky, so it's a pretty big win. On the pest plant side, I've also called these wins probably a little bit prematurely, but we need to look for positives in biosecurity sometimes. So this year we've had no parrot's feather. So that's been several years since without finding any parrot's feather, which is one of our eradication species. The crack willow out on Rakiura are all pretty much dead. So we are looking really positive in terms of removal of all crack willow from Rakiura. And the picture of field horsetail was a couple of years ago. The team have gone back out this year and that site they were not able to find any field horsetail. So a few more years of checking, but really positive in those spaces that we're progressing in the right direction towards eradication. Also, I put a couple of these in the report, but wanted to share a few more pictures from Mid-Dome for you, because obviously that's our biggest program, probably one of the most expensive ones that we do every year. We've now had, with support from Mid-Dome Trust, done photo points 3 times since 2008. And you can see in some sites, so that top one, there wasn't that many trees back in 2008. By 2016, you can see that far bit in the sun is all covered in green trees. And now in 2024, that's all been sprayed and we've had a really good death rate, and so that site is now clear. We've had other sites like that middle one where the workers managed to maintain it, so that nice tussock grassland is still tussock grassland because of the work done, so that's really good. And then we've had a few other sites where actually we are going backwards, so you can see 2008 no pine trees, 2016 no pine trees, 2024 we're beginning to see that flush of trees come through, and quite a lot of that is Douglas fir that we're now beginning to see in those areas that we clear or have been cleared. So mixed news. We have now completed all the control for the season that we're able to afford. It hasn't been enough to maintain those gains we made thanks to Jobs for Nature in previous years. Possum control areas, just very quickly, in the last quarter we have managed to do control or support landowners to do maintenance in 11 PCAs throughout the region, and we've done some monitoring as well. The new PCA that we set up at Sandstone came back at a really good 0.3% RTC, absolutely fantastic. And then the others, we've got a result of 2 there and a high one of 11. Those high ones, we do go back in and help landowners to try and bring them down. But as you're aware, we are reviewing the possum control programme and may bring some possible changes to you for approval in the next 6 months or a year. And then just lastly, biodiversity, obviously continue with a lot of the biodiversity programs over the summer months. A lot of work down at Lower Matara with planting and then making sure we've actually maintained them. So that top picture is a piece of ES land with the trees on it that have been, small trees that have been planted and maintained, and we've got really good survival. Environmental enhancement fund grants are going really well. The team's currently helping everyone do their final reports for funding that's been achieved this year and making sure they're spending everything they're supposed to have, and is also processing grants for next year. And I believe we have had the biggest number of applicants ever and a really high quality of applications coming through. So the team's going to have a hard job of choosing, of going through the criteria and making sure that money's dished out fairly this year. There's so many that have come in. We also celebrated World Wetlands Day, which I think we've talked about on this table before, with the showing of the Swamp Sacred Place movie. And we held a bio blitz up into a taproom. So a few of you will remember we did our first bio blitz a few years ago in Sandy Point. This year we left Invercargill and went out to a taproom, ran a really long day with schools, had other people coming in, and 325 different things were observed. That's thought to be over 210 species, and we had over 100 people getting really involved in that event. So as you can see, the kids out at night looking for moths. We also did look for bats and did some events during the day. So really good, positive bit of biodiversity outreach in a community we don't often get a chance to work with. So it was really good. That was our quarter.
Awesome. Thanks very much. John,
there was talk of maybe the Brooksming side of it, is it?
Yes, we have not been able to find any rocks in the area that they were sighted. We've blitzed all the landowners and there's all the contacts in the big wide area and followed up a couple of other phone calls, but we haven't managed to find any rocks.
Thanks, Chairman. The EEF, just wanting to check in that you still think that the model is suitable and correct, and whether the funding available is, I mean, I kind of know you're going to say, no, it's not enough. But is it, competitive enough for it to be suitable?
For this year and with the jobs fund, because we still got one more year of Jobs for Nature funding for that, yes, it's a reasonable amount of money. It's great. The model's been working really well. If we go back to once Jobs for Nature funding finishes, if we go back to pre-COVID levels, then we'll probably need to go back to either the old model or have a look at criteria, because we'll have a massive reduction in available budget again. So for this year or this coming year, we're great, but the next 12 months we need to look at what does our biodiversity programme post Jobs for Nature look like, and do we need to make changes, and what do we need to upgrade?
If I can, Chairman, might that be more of a wetlands conversation in the future?
I think this is there's a whole heap of questions.
Thanks, Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, young lady. Wildcats.
Yes.
I'm getting a lot of reports, messages, and actually, there's a spot I constantly seem to see a couple just this side of Mosman. Luckily, one's dead now. But there's still one that occasionally pops out on the road. It's becoming a bit of a concern. Have you had many people informing you of a rise of wildcats?
No, I don't think we're noticing a rise in complaints about wildcats.
Okay. I'm noticing a rise in what I'm seeing and what I've been notified. So yeah. The concern was up the Milford Road towards the park. So that's where it was. Bus lines.
Right.
So yeah. It's of concern. It's just something that we can note. I think we should note it.
Yep, we can definitely. And I think we've talked before about looking at the next RPMP and what should and shouldn't be in it, and feeding information like that into what we know about what's happening in the region will be really important.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Around the environmental enhancement fund, so unless you've just been looking at the budgets and things for long-term plans, great to see Tania here. Where does it fit in? It's not under biosecurity though, is it?
It's currently sitting in Jobs for Nature.
Jobs for Nature, so it's under grants. There'll be a grant
So
scenario.
ES still contributes some, so we contribute some money into that Jobs for Nature programme, so MFE gives us the bulk of it, and we put so that all of our original money that was going to grants goes into that other pot, but it will show in the budget line as Jobs for Nature.
So here's a technical question, Tania. Have we got a budget for that? Like we've run out this year, some Jobs for Nature, only one more year?
We've got until 30th of June 2025 for Jobs for Nature.
This next season, yeah, but have we got any budget for that 300k? Is that what we put in?
What?
For
Yeah.
around 300 or something. Is there any budget for that into the budgets going into the long-term plan?
Everything that's existing in the biosecurity budget has been carried forward through into the first year of the year. So our contribution is still showing in the long-term plan. Yes.
I'm just saying with Jobs for Nature, is that, I'm just looking long-term in the next 3 years. Is there anything, or are we going to come back and see, you're going to be asking?
The Jobs for Nature program is budgeted for 1 year in the
Yeah.
LNP. There has been no discussion with yourselves and therefore no decision after that. However, if you do remember, we did talk about a 2% uplift in growth for year 2 potentially in the LTP, and that hasn't been allocated to any specific project. So it's there potentially for projects such as biodiversity, Jobs for Nature, or anything else that councils decide.
Oh, it's hugely important. That's why I'm just saying, is it in the system that we're calculating that as part of looking ahead? because we're going to be asking a lot more questions around the numbers. So just making sure these are sort of the programs that we want to know where it's going. So that's good.
Thanks, Jeremy. Just on that, I just picked up there, did you say going into year one that the Walding Pine works, that money's secure for that? Because
The ES portion of what
ES
we
portion.
have always been funding it. Yeah.
Okay, so would that be enough to maintain when MPI walking away?
No, so currently Environment Southland funds $50,000 to the Mid-Dome Trust. MPI we're providing us over 2 million in Jobs for Nature. That it was down to 750 with a top up from International Visitor Levy of about 1 million and something this year. Next year, I don't think MPI have confirmed, but I think we'd be sitting around the 700k mark. So that is, I do not believe that is enough to maintain the gains.
Okay. That's really good. Oh, Morris, yes.
Well, thanks. This, on page 41, we talk about the possum control area program. This sort of comes back to a bit to what Jeremy was asking. I know we've had the presentation with Dave a while ago. We've got, you're working on a program. Can you be more specific about that? Is that going to come into next year's annual plan, or can it be funded by this year's annual plan? And sort of what are we talking about in terms of money, or is it a bit too soon to know that?
Or do you want to answer on that time
So as you recall, we've had did a workshop in terms of possum control areas and how they're performing, and you know, there's a range of options that are available. We could increase compliance and do that type of work, or we could look at a centralised model. It's all a little bit too early for this LTP, but certainly allows council to think about it for annual plans, and so that's probably the short answer. There's still a bit more work to go through to decide what are the range of options to bring back to council. That's work that Ali and the executive team will look at and then come back. So yeah, it's something, as with anything, as Jeremy's sort of indicated, you know, you can look at these part of an LTP, but you also have the option to move budgets and change priorities and look at annual plans as well. So that's something that you'll work through, no doubt, over the next few years.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, that's all. It's pretty important, you know. Once we've got the possums down, we've got to keep them down.
Yeah, that's right. Where it goes backwards doesn't, if you don't do it. So, hey, look, we might just carry on. Thanks very much, Ali, for that. Give them a minute.
I'll just congratulate the staff member who wrote, "We've got a plant causing strife in your neighbourhood." Ha ha ha. Thank you very much.
So look, I'll get someone, if they could move that to receive that. Thank you, Jeremy. Someone to second, please. John. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Right, what are we jumping to? 9.3. Operational updates from catchment integration. Thank you. You want to lead us off? Yeah, it's just a meeting.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good evening. Kia ora. All of those things. Yes, sorry. So kia ora, councillors, through you, Chair, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update. So obviously I've included a report on our divisional activities for the last quarter. There's a few things that I think it's worth probably highlighting. And can I say we have a presentation that is obviously up on screen right now, but that will be presented in the next meeting. So I've just loaded that up and it will cover off some of the topics as well, but I'll just highlight some key points and some interesting things that we've been doing over the last couple of months. So I guess to start in the regulatory implementation space, that is a key part of what we do in our interaction with the community, and it's particularly pertinent today with the adoption of a key part of the plan. So there are some new rules that are coming in that farmers will be wanting to get their heads around, and we've been involved working directly with policy planning and communications to help design
in the first instance some fact sheets. I realise they're not the only answer to some of the changes that are happening, but certainly trying to help that information be conveyed to farmers and landowners in the most efficient way possible. We've also been undertaking our proactive engagement work as well. So this is not, we've covered winter grazing obviously already today, but just to advise that, we have had a proactive winter grazing approach in place now for a couple of years. It reflects the fact that winter grazing activities happen across a 12-month period. They're not just that time from, the June, July period when stock are on crop. And we're certainly very much aware of the fact that there are some new provisions coming in, particularly around grass-based wintering, and we're wanting to make sure that we can help the farmers that are involved in those activities understand what the expectations are. I guess notwithstanding all of that, the outcome is still, that we actually have the right actions on the ground and that they're founded in those good management practices as well as keeping with the provisions. We've also had a number of queries come in, so we do find that we receive queries around a range of topics: culverts, stock access we've had recently, sacrifice paddocks. So again, it's really important that we keep the team up to date with the nature of the provisions to be able to respond to those. So that's the regulatory implementation space. And sorry, to conclude on that one as well, obviously we continue with a number of activities in the contaminated land and pollution prevention space. That's quite a process, and I've spoken, I think, with council before about the process of understanding a contaminated site and undertaking remediation. So we're lucky that we have some good skills within the team, and we are working closely in partnership with government, but also with agencies like Department of Conservation. So moving from regulatory implementation to the education and advice, a big part of what we have been thinking about for some time has been farm planning. Clearly, there's been some shifts in the regulatory space there. However, we have been working in farm plans and farm planning for many years in the team. Councillors, you might be aware about our Focus Activity Farm Plan program that we had in place, and we still actually have queries from farmers coming in who've had those plans and who want to understand a bit more about how to update them and how to work in with the new regulations. So those plans are really important, those focus activity farm plans and the information they hold, and that not only do they have actions that farmers were proposing to do back when they were done, they also hold information that we're finding farmers really want to access. So physiographics, the soils information, we can now do things like add LiDAR to that package of information that helps bring about the best decisions that they can make for their property and the ones that will achieve good outcomes. It's interesting, I spent the afternoon yesterday at the Balance Farm Environment Awards field day at the Miller property. And so a lot of talk there on a couple of issues. The first was actually the good information so that farmers can make decisions about where to do things on their properties. And there's a range of information available now. And so it was really interesting to see that that actually expressed on the ground, because we often talk about this, but to actually see how the decisions were being made and how they were being reflected on the property, was actually really useful. And for me, there was an overarching theme yesterday around the idea of having a plan. And so, we'll come to riparian programs in a bit, but that was an absolutely fundamental theme, that having a plan and doing it piece by piece, gathering information, taking action, was really strong throughout the whole business model for the Miller family yesterday. And I think that really reinforces the need to have those ongoing conversations and develop up those plans. If I moved again still to education and advice, so we continue to work alongside catchment groups really closely. So following the liaison committee meetings, we've revitalised, if you like, the Mataura Catchment Liaison Committee grant that was approved through the budget. So we've actually developed up a model to be able to go out to the catchment groups in the Mataura catchment. We've got some information available that we've just been working with Thriving South and some catchment group people and the chair of the liaison committee to finalise the process of the documentation. And so we're pretty excited to be able to get out there soon and actually share that information and try and actually get that funding utilised. It was stood up a number of years ago and for various reasons didn't really get picked up. but there's a real level of energy and enthusiasm to do that through both the liaison committee and I think a real level of interest by the catchment groups as well. So that's looking quite promising. We've also recently met with the Waihopai catchment group. So I realise that there's lots of dipping into this conversation today, but that was an initial conversation to speak with the farmers around the Waihopai work that we're doing, the catchment planning work that we're doing, and we have a small kind of field trip planned for I think next week to go and visit the farming part of it. Now I have to say, in terms of the Waihopai conversation, it's not just the farming context, there's an important urban context as well. But next week we'll go out and have a look at some of the interventions and mitigations happening in that space. And finally, yeah, so if I probably will leave it there actually, because we'll come to the riparian projects, we'll touch on those and some of the catchment projects in the next item. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Sharon. Questions too. Jeremy.
It's been it's been close to 5 years since that catchment funding setup was put. There was only one problem. It was the science team that didn't allow it didn't fit into their criteria to sign it off. So hopefully we've got that all sorted out. That it's not just about the science. It was people just wanting to do things. From what it was quite highly annoying at the time that it got shut down. Well, it didn't get shut down. It was people's.
Through you, Chair, we've actually got a slide coming up in the next presentation that shows you, I'm not sure if you're going to read it, but it shows you the areas that we've suggested that catchment groups can apply for funding. And so what we're looking to do, I mean, I think it's fair to say that people are highly motivated to be able to work, to be able to share this funding out to the community and to not have barriers and impediments in place.
Just in that though, you're setting boundaries around what the community, when you're saying, oh, areas that we want. It's not just what we want, it's what the community wants. That's what I'm trying to say. This is trying to get community. I know they're talking about saying one farmer wanting to plant all his farm and use it for himself. It's actually trying to encourage on the ground people's own innovation and saying these are ideas. But if again, we don't want to say, oh, it doesn't fit into one of our boxes, it won't get through. So we went through that last one. It was highly annoying from public.
Through you, Chair, I'll be far more careful with my words. The boxes are suggestions of areas that the catchment groups like. And I have, it's interesting, we've been navigating some of those conversations in the last week or two. Stasia met earlier this week, and there is a sentiment that perhaps we weren't open to feedback, and certainly we are absolutely motivated to make this work. So there is definitely opportunity if we have issues.
Is it fair to sort of make the assumption that the finalisation of this, notwithstanding that it's been around and was on pause for some period of time, but the finalisation of the fund and the approach will come back to council just for final review? Is that the intention?
It seems wise.
I would think just so that council, because there's a good number of council that are aware of its conception and didn't. Yeah.
And whether we do that,
helpful to remind councillors, I think. Yeah.
Or whether we do that, or whether we ensure there's a briefing so that councillors know that it's happening and understand how it is going to operate. And they're happy to do that in more detail.
You're obviously got away of good things that go on. This one.
Yeah. I think that's. Sorry,
I'm just.
Anastasia has been directly involved. Is there anything you wanted to?
Yes. So your comments, Jeremy. They're quite fierce. So this time we're trying to, instead of highlighting things that we don't want you to do, or that like those constricting rules, we want people to be creative. So we're giving them ideas and pictures of initiatives that they might like to take up, and we're encouraging them, going out and marketing at this time and encouraging them to put the applications in and be creative, and we'll see what we can do from there.
Just what I'm thinking here, can we get to the point where the council actually, we don't need to know about the projects, but we know if it's, you don't have to come back to the council, to keep the system going. But they're only, 5,000, it's about seeding ideas and seeding that you've got the right, so sign them off and just make it happen. I mean, I know we'd like to see the things, but you don't want to have to come back every time and go, oh, can we spend this? Make it simple.
And that's how, I mean, that's where, and perhaps actually, you're right, Paul, just through you, Chair, I think that there were agreements made around how this would happen. And I think perhaps some of them were perhaps more enthusiastically implemented than they needed to be. So, but we're happy to bring back those parameters in the process so that there's a good understanding of how that will work. But I, as I've probably already said, we are very motivated to work alongside the catchment groups to make this work. And can I say, as is the Mataura Liaison Committee, who are the ones kind of, diverting this funding. So, yeah. And this sits, it's interesting, it's not the only example, because of course, we'll mention this later on too, but the riparian fencing fund that we have administered in the Waiau is another example of where, there's a real high motivation to work alongside the community in the funding partnership role.
Thanks for the question, Jeremy. Morris.
Well, thank you. Yes, the riparian planting and the Waiau planting program, you get a lot of people to come along and plant the trees, and it's all good fun. But then the next year, when the trees start to get overgrown with weeds and grass, and the year after that, and the year after that.
You're not Mr. Positive today.
No, but I do this myself. I've done a lot of this myself, and it's very hard to get native trees established. I've seen what other people have done. You have to go around and spray around them every year, or you have to put a lot of effort into maintaining them after planting them. So I think you do this, but I just wanted to make sure that we have enough resources to make sure that the stuff we do, produces a good result at year 5 and year 10.
So through you, Chair, absolutely. So we're very focused on the maintenance side of the work that goes on down at the Waihopai. And as an aside, it's been a key theme of, or principle, if you like, almost, of our riparian projects, is to ensure that whatever, particularly when we're working with farmers actually, but any groups, that actually the amount of planting that they do is the right size to ensure that they can actually continue to maintain it in the coming years. So that is a key principle, is actually not too large. We want people to be planting the amount and quantity that actually they can sustain. The Waihopai is a slightly different situation. So it's interesting, it's a long-term project, the Waihopai, that we have sustained probably for in excess of 10 years now. The planting that occurred up by the dam around the wetland area, the planting just on the side of the dam by the wee gravel track there that was done by the kindergartens and others when I started in this organisation in 2011, I think. So there are projects, and there are others around the region like this, where we maintain an ongoing program of work, and then we ensure that we've got resourcing and funding to be able to do that. And also we're finding too, you'll see mention of the Waihopai project in a number of places. So we have the work that we are doing through the EnviroSchools program, and with working in with school groups and catchment groups, but we are also now working into, as part of the Stock Bank tree removal program, to be replanting trees, and there is work, the contractors are underway at the moment, with the whole where we've taken trees out, we're now replacing trees, and we've got 2 locations. One is to join in with the Waihopai, and there's a second location now down on the Kingswell as well. So, and there is a range of reasons for doing that. Now there is a biodiversity aspect to that, but there's also a community connection perspective. And I think there's mentioned in here, we have an open day coming up, or a celebration coming up, I think May the 25th, and that joins together all those strands actually at our site. That's just downstream of the dam, and sitting in the office at the moment a whole lot of signs that children have through the EnviroSchools program have contributed to, that are plant identification signs. So we're really honing in on that as kind of an area that is quite an urban visual area. There is lots to discuss in that area around biodiversity, but also around the flood management and the climate resilience issues, and the urban issues to do with how do you manage those sites in town.
Fiona, so we've just got a question for Linda, and then I'll do a question and
Great. A comment and a question. Comment relates to the Waihopai plantings and reinforces the human element and human connection of that because I can remember taking my eldest, who is now nearly 22, when he was probably, I don't know, 7, at a local primary school to plant trees right up the top above the dam. And I think he could probably walk straight to the trees that he planted. So you know, that's a long time, and he's very proud of the fact that he contributed to that, and I am very proud of him for doing it. So that's great, and it reinforces some of that long-term human connection, which also brings me to my question, which is under the empowered students section. Lots of great work. I know you do lots of great work, but I'm asking about youth engagement here and what possibilities there might be for not a youth council, because I don't think that terminology or that structure is appropriate for us as a regional council. But you know, what you're thinking about for focus groups or a forum or a symposium or something that we can actually start activating some of those not EnviroSchool students. Some of the ones who don't even know about the environment, you know what I mean? Like are much broader. So I'm just wondering what thinking you've got.
Yeah, it's interesting. So through you, Chair, this one has bubbled along for a while, but I think actually through some of the climate resilience work, it's really kind of brought it to the fore. And so there are internal sort of staff conversations happening at the moment to explore actually how might we, what structures, well, what outcomes might we like to see, and what structures would we need in place to be able to support increasing, you know, youth engagement. And notwithstanding that, also, who are these youth? Who are the youth that we might like? So, you know, in our original strategy, education strategy, there was a direct action around improving our engagement with youth and young people. So youth being typically people still at school, and young people being kind of that broader connection through to kind of mid-20s. So look, I'll leave that there, but suffice to say that there are, you know, certainly some internal discussions going on to see what is possible. I think it would be fair to say, about our education people, that actually the biggest challenge we will have is resourcing, actually, because obviously there's, you know, I've just actually been looking today at the ECAN youth website area, and I think they've got sort of, you know, 4 or 5 staff working in that space alone, about 8 or 9 people across the education space. So I'll just leave that there. Thank you, Chair.
You know, I'm going to keep asking.
Thanks, Lyndall, for the question. Just a couple of comments. Really excited about this Waikawa Integrated Catchment Management Plan. And it sort of fits in with that notion around self-determination in the catchments, or planning, whatever you would like to call it, but the people determining their own future in their own place. So when it's appropriate, and if it's appropriate, would that group like to come to the council for a visit and talk to us at some stage down the track? Only if they're happy with that. And I'd also suggest for the Waihopai catchment group to link in with the catchment team and look at that structure, that flood protection structure, so they can understand, you know, maybe they could feel in time a collective responsibility to slowing that water down and protecting that top end of town, and being involved in any works going forward there. So that could be a good link in. So
just very briefly, Chair, we will offer that invite out to the Waikawa people, and just to, I guess, reinforce, actually, as part of the Waihopai, we have catchment operations within the project team directly involved and coming out on site with us and engaging, because obviously that's such a key part of anything to do with that catchment, both from we need to achieve protection of infrastructure, but also actually what opportunities do we have to do things differently.
You stay there, Fiona. We'll just pass this, if we could, someone to move that we receive this report. Thanks, Lyndall. Second. All those in favour?
Right.
Yes, that's carried. Thanks. And the final item there is 9.6.
I'll just, before Fiona jumps in, I'll just turn, this is our group work programme. Fiona manages it on behalf of the whole sort of group in terms of bringing all this together, and I know Ali will probably be here as well contributing to it. I just wanted to bring your attention to, we're doing a presentation on the Mataura and the Waio. Waio was due to be presented well, I don't know when the next quarter would be. Would it be August? The reason I raise it is there's quite an interesting. I've asked Fiona if at the next regional services meeting there could be an update on the interesting work that's been done in forestry and the slash work, and that would be a standalone piece that maybe you could bring to the next. So you've got the benefit of 2 catchments today, and that frees up some space in the next meeting to have that forestry and slash update, which is quite interesting. So I just wanted to make that point and then perhaps hand over to Fiona to take you through the presentation.
Great. Okay. So I have Anastasia. So Anastasia Raymond's Senior Land Sustainability Officer. So she, in lieu of Craig Smith, who's away sick today, is going to assist with providing this presentation. And it's been pulled together with really kind of the key activities we're involved with around in terms of the WIO and the Mataura. So I suppose we're taking less of a activity focus, and now we're looking at sort of place-based, what is the work happening across these areas. So we'll just take you through that without further ado. So just really a start up there in terms of what actually we're talking about around integration, and I know we talk about this a lot, but I don't think it's especially difficult. It's how are we working with a focus around towards Hauora, so and Kyoto Kitai, that stems obviously from our regional forum recommendations. If you think of those as being the vision and where we're trying to work to across these catchments, it's broader than just the water space. We want to look at land, we want to look at biodiversity, and we want to look at people who live in these areas and how those things interconnect. We have values and outcomes for mana whenua certainly at the core of this, and that's reflected in, obviously today you talked about the proposed plan, it's threaded through the plan, it's threaded through all of the work that Environment Southland does. And I guess the bottom there is just simply that we know to do this well, and this is one of the real principles that sit behind our catchment planning work that we're doing, is it can't just be all about us, you know, both in terms of the oversight and management, but also the delivery and implementation. So we need to do this alongside and with a whole range of people in our community. Sorry. So again, just very briefly, we're talking today and you know, about the Waio, one of our largest catchments in Mataura, but also one of our 2 largest catchments actually. So we'll just take you through, and really we're just going to touch on some projects that are going on. Either there's one across the region, but the remaining are specific to those catchments. So Anastasia, hand over to you.
Okay, so there's lots of projects, and many of these double up on what we just talked about before, but so hopefully you're aware of the Southland Riparian project that's been moving along, where we've been quite busy, and like I'd prefer to plant plants in the springtime, but this is everyone's busy on farm, so we're getting a lot out now, and we're halfway through at least to getting rid of getting our 10,000 plants out. Yep. Another major project in the Waiau is the riparian fencing, which is part of the Meridian money. That's right, isn't it? Yep. So there's quite a bit of, it's about 50 grand available, and we subsidise, or we help manage subsidising 50% of that fencing. So how much have we got so far out? Half of the works are done. Oh yeah, she's got 34,000 so far for fencing this year.
So we co-fund that 50% with the landowner, and I think so far this year we've got 4 landowners, and we've got about 6 or 7 landowners who are sitting there. So this is an example of the types of fencing that happens. Fencing sitting there ready to go, and we work very much in partnership often, and I think I've just written this somewhere else today, with the Waiau Habitat
Enhancement Trust.
Yes, thank you. Goodness me. Thank you. That just went from my head, Councillor Rodway. So often what happens is that we'll work together with the landowner and with Roger from the trust, and we fund through this fund the fencing side of things, and they'll often fund, the trust funds the biodiversity. So it's actually that, again, talked about longevity already today. That's been a ongoing project that has seen, you know, the change of personnel and staff from both our team and also from the trust as well. So it continues to kind of progress. And I suppose if there's anything that people would say is, how can we make that bigger? How do we do more?
so speaking of the Waiau Trust and Roger, he's also been helping us out with in the catchment groups doing the MCI, macro invertebrate community indexes. So we've spent quite a bit of time in the Waiau and also in the Tara catchments teaching community groups how to do that and appreciate their waterways and the life that's in there and observe the changes. The Arawia catchment groups, so this is where the erosion control work is going on at the moment. So 6 landowners have in the Arawia are opted to join in on the program. So what do you want to say with this? So Hill Country Erosion Program, they're going to do good practices and mitigations to reduce the impacts.
So yeah, this is part of our Hill Country Erosion Fund. We've got a number of pieces of work really that we need to bring to council around that, but particularly in relation to the Waiau, we're working with the Arawia Catchment Group. We have 6 farmers who are engaged in activities related to erosion management. You'll see there's a range of mitigations that are covered by this, including popular at the moment is constructed wetlands, but also detainment bunds, sediment traps. There's a range of areas that we're looking at as possible mitigations. I think the focus for the farmers' work is probably around pole planting. And so I have to say, it's not just about sort of erosion control that requires pole planting. There's also critical source area management and so forth. So so that's an ongoing piece of work that will continue into probably into next year, and we'll look to it as potentially leveraging off future projects. But that is sort of a pilot that we're trying at the moment.
Good. So Home Creek Restoration Project, that's near Manapori. And this is a great community partnership. So you can see there's lots of different groups, communities, schools, and areas interested. And we've been, it's a couple of years now, going out there and trying to restore the natural vegetation and at Home Creek, making a bit of a day of it and getting lots of people involved.
Yep. And this is a direct relationship too, actually, with also with the catchment operations team. Without them, we couldn't have actually cleared the site in a way that we're actually able to do the planting that we have, and also Knowledge Dock, where we have a partnership with them to be able to access the land. So and we've had just recently another planting, so 500 plants in a day, and we've just recently had a planting day out there.
That was the day that we had the Waiau catchment liaison.
Your excuse for not helping, is it?
It was.
Some of us were there.
It didn't want to fall in the creek.
We don't speak of that. Right.
So Charlton Waimumu, you might remember this was a few years ago, was a planting pilot. Over summer, we had a couple of students doing work for us. So this was one of the projects that we sent them out to. So maybe answering Morris's questions about maintenance on plants. So we did this pilot project of planting, but when we got the students and we sent them out to go and revisit the planting sites. And I think even just the act of revisiting inspires the landowners to get out there and tidy it up perhaps before we come and have a look, or just know that it's still important and we're still thinking about it. So but anyway, so there was interesting observations. The students went out there and counted the survival of the plants and revisited them all, and sure, they're still small, so you can see from the picture you can't see a lot of the plants, but survival I think has been pretty good. I'm told by the students that the best survival rate was 95%, and the worst is 60% survival. So I would say that's a win. There's a few other sort of data there that they've said about what they could find and what plants were survived best and what didn't.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask that 38.1, what does that mean? 38.1, it's not hectares or anything, is it?
Metres.
I don't know what a K is there, but it looks metre squared. So that's so through your chair, that's an area. So we can actually there's an interesting technology conversation here, but we have dashboards that we can gather data with, and then we can actually we record that data, and we also use that both for checking work, but also we use that for the contractors as well. So I may need to go and check that specific number there, but the area should be a polygon is how we put it. So it should be an area where the planting happened. Yep.
So it should be hectares. How many hectares is that?
Could be metres squared because it's not a huge, huge area.
It's 10,000 squares and 3.8 hectares.
That was a wee maths test. Yeah, right.
Thank you, though.
Maths test today.
Yeah, right. And okay, so we talked about the Matara catchment liaison committees and their grants. And we'll revisit some of those questions that you had about the decisions on who gets the grants and how much. But yep, cool. This sounds really good. We're out there. The next step now for us is to go and promote this to the various catchment groups that are out there. So if you move on to the next slide, we kind of revived this catchment liaison grant after this is the number of catchment groups that we've been involved with and some of the ideas of what the catchment groups are starting to work on. So hopefully we can give some seed funding for them to get on with some of these ideas. But so just you'll see various groups here that are working on sediment traps and end losses and erosion controls. Yeah, so that's what we've been involved with. And the Waikawa project, which you talked about.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Good. The Aralia catchment group, the 6 farms signed up. Are they in the upper Aralia, or are they? I can imagine the worst area for the sort of erosion issues would be from Pukemerri to Paikapaika, sort of that area there, because it's quite steep and everything.
Yeah.
Or is it further up?
I believe they were identified as having erosion. Do you know, Fiona?
Yeah, so look, sorry, through you, Chair, we'll have to come back to you with the
Yeah.
exact locations. I do not know that piece of information, but I do know that the reason they have become involved is because they have some either erosion issues or they have the types of soil that are predisposed.
Know a couple, and I can tell them to join in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
yes.
Happy to. Yeah. Happy to do that. Yeah. We're hopeful that we can actually use this as a springboard to leverage further funding opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Phil?
Just that particular diagram struck me as it kind of looked almost as if there was proportions within that circle or wheel. And I'm just wondering, does that reflect some percentage allocation or interest in those particular areas, or was that just per chance that was drawn that way?
Carried away. But this is a really cool graphic, I think. So that came from a number of the different community engagements. We did surveys and hall visits and sticky notes and all that sort of stuff. And so all the feedback that was collated of people, what the values were and what most inspired them about the Waikawa, we've put that together and that's displayed visually to proportionally. And isn't that cool? Like biodiversity was was a top priority for people there.
Cool. Well, that is kind of positive. It just wasn't apparent to look at that visual if that was the
Right, sorry, I should have explained it.
Because if it is, that is kind of powerful.
Oh, very.
Yeah.
We made it clear that was.
So if you look at once we do bring subsequently the finalised catchment story map, which because there's actually a link between those. Anastasia is very excited about this. So there's a link though between actually the size of the colours there relates to the aspirations and actions suggested by the people, both the community and the agencies. And actually the thing that really strikes me is the breadth of kind of issues raised and the very nice, because this is always something we think about is if you looked back at our values work that we did through the People, Water and Land project, there's like an absolute beautiful alignment between these two things, between the values that have been identified. Absolutely, yeah.
if I may comment on that, Mr. Chairman, looks like a thriving economy is not very important. Are they hippies over there or something?
Well, at least it's there, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things that were brought up there, but at least it's one of the top.
To be fair, this is not our voice, yeah, this is not our voice, this is the voice of the people that contributed, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, it's fascinating. There were definitely a lot of farmers involved and business owners, so that's the way it came.
Yeah, but it makes sense if you get all those other things right, you'll have a thriving economy and finances. Any further questions? We're just gonna keep moving it. Want to be finished by 4:30 at the latest. We're only there's a few things, so we can wind that up if that's good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you,
for
thank you,
that
councillors.
report. So I'll just ask that someone move that. Jeremy. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Thank you, that's carried. Before we move into public excluded. I'll just say that this has been quite a big meeting, let things flow a bit, but this demonstrates the amount of work that's been done, is continuing to be done in the catchment. I might be asking for a more prime time slot or at some stage, once we get into the real works program. Just put it out there.
Yeah, fight you for it.
So I just want to acknowledge the work in it. When you go around the province, people come up to you and say, "Oh, what do you do, Environment South?" We don't see. They just need to come to these meetings and see the width of the work right across the region. It's not always in your face that it's been done. So, so we'll move into public exclude. So we'll have probably, Michaela, we'll have some good reasons for that, won't we? Could you share them?
So we are moving into public exclusion to protect the privacy of natural persons, including that of deceased natural persons.
Thank you very much. Move that, Miles. Second that, please. So Jeremy, all those in favour?
Just before we proceed, we just get the thumbs out that